It was a crisp autumn evening when I, Cole Harper, walked into our home to find my wife, Julia, humming in the kitchen. The scent of rosemary chicken wafted through the air, a rare effort on her part. We had been married for years, and in that time, her enthusiasm for cooking had waned, along with, I suspected, her enthusiasm for me. I chalked it up to the natural ebb and flow of marriage. But that night, something felt different. Something felt off. "What's the occasion?" I asked, loosening my tie and tossing my keys onto the counter. Julia turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I thought we could have a nice dinner, just us and a guest, a guest." "Yes," she said, avoiding my gaze. "You'll see." I'd always been a trusting man. It was a trait I prided myself on, even if some called it naivety. I didn't press her instead. I showered, changed into something casual, and came back downstairs to find the table set with our best china and wine glasses filled to the brim. Julia was fussing over the placement of candles when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," she said quickly, her voice tight. The door opened, and in stepped a man. He was tall, with the kind of rugged good looks that screamed 2 gym memberships and Instagram filters. He carried himself with a confidence that immediately grated on me. Julia's smile. W.I., a genuine smile this time. And she introduced him as Marcus, a friend from work. Friend, right the evening unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Marcus was charming, almost overly so, and Julia laughed at his every joke, her hand brushing his arm more times than I cared to count. I tried to engage in the conversation, but it was like being a third wheel at my own dinner table. My suspicions grew with every passing minute. It wasn't until dessert, a store-bought cheesecake Julia tried to pass off as homemade, that the bombshell dropped. Marcus leaned back in his chair, smirking, and said, "You're a lucky man." Cole Julia's quite the catch. The way he said it with that smug undertone made my blood run cold. Julia's face flushed, and she stammered, "Marcus, maybe we should go." I asked, my voice calm but sharp. "You've already brought him here. Why not let him finish what he clearly came to say?" Marcus glanced at Julia, then back at me. "Look, man, I didn't mean to cause any trouble, Julia and I. Well, we have feelings for each other, she wanted to tell you tonight, but she thought it'd be better if I was here for support." Support? My wife brought her lover to our family dinner for support. I sat there stunned as Julia mumbled something about how she didn't want to hurt me, how she'd been unhappy for years, how Marcus made her feel alive again. Her words blurred together, a cacophony of betrayal that drowned out the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. But I didn't yell. I didn't throw my wine glass against the wall or flip the table, even though every fiber of my being screamed for me to do something. Instead, I smiled, a cold, calculating smile that caught both Julia and Marcus off guard. "Thank you for being honest," I said, my voice steady. "Sure, this wasn't easy for either of you." Julia blinked. "You're not mad." "Oh, I'm livid," I replied, standing up and collecting the plates. "But I'm also a gentleman, and a gentleman always cleans up after dinner." I carried the dishes to the kitchen, my mind racing. For years, I had been the dependable husband, the one who worked late to pay the bills, who remembered anniversaries, who bought flowers just because. And this was how she repaid me, by flaunting her affair in my own home. No, this wouldn't stand if Julia and Marcus wanted drama. I'd give them the kind they never forget. The next morning, I called into work and set my plan into motion. First, I withdrew half of our joint savings and opened a new account in my name. Only then, I contacted a lawyer to discuss my options. My attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Lisa, assured me that I had the upper hand, especially given Julia's blatant infidelity document. Everything Lisa advised, text messages, emails, anything you can find by the end of the day. I had copies of every incriminating message Julia had ever sent to Marcus. Turns out she wasn't as careful with her phone as she thought. The next step was more personal. I packed a suitcase with Julia's clothes, her favorite shoes, and a few sentimental items. Then I booked a hotel room for the weekend, using her credit card when Friday night rolled around. Julia came home to find me waiting in the living room. I had lit candles and poured 2 glasses of wine, creating a scene straight out of a romance movie. Cole, she said hesitantly, "What's all this?" "I've been thinking," I said, handing her a glass. "You're right. We've been drifting apart, and it's time we face the truth." Her eyes softened. I I'm glad you understand. "Oh, I understand," I said, clinking my glass against hers, "which is why I think we should spend some time apart." Apart. Yes, in fact, I've already taken the liberty of packing your things. Her face fell as I gestured toward the suitcase by the door. "Cole, what are you?" "I've booked you a hotel room," I interrupted. "Don't worry. It's on your card. You can spend the weekend with Marcus for all I care. But when Monday comes, I want you to find somewhere else to stay." You can't be serious," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh, I'm deadly serious." She tried to argue to guilt me into reconsidering, but I stood firm when she finally left. Dragging her suitcase behind her, I followed her to the curb. "Cole, please," she sobbed. "I made a mistake, but we can work through this." I leaned in close, my voice low and icy. "You made your choice, Julia. Now live with it." Then I turned and walked back into the house, leaving her crying in the street. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I filed for divorce, citing infidelity, and let Lisa handle the messy details. Julia's attempts to reconcile were met with silence. Even Marcus tried reaching out, claiming he didn't mean to cause trouble. I blocked him without a second thought. I'd like to say it was easy, that I moved on without looking back, but the truth is more complicated. There were nights when I lay awake, replaying every moment, wondering how I had missed the signs. But eventually the pain replaced by a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. One day, as I was sorting through old photos, I came across a picture from our wedding. Julia looked radiant, her smile genuine, her eyes filled with love. I stared at the photo for a long time before tearing it in half and tossing it into the trash. That chapter of my life was over, and I wasn't about to let it define me. As for Julia and Marcus, their romance fizzled out within months. Last I heard, she was living in a tiny apartment, struggling to make ends meet. Meanwhile, I focused on myself, rediscovering hobbies I'd long forgotten and reconnecting with friends I'd neglected. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold, but for me, the sweetest revenge was simply moving on, living well, and leaving the past behind. In the end, I realized that losing Julia wasn't the tragedy I once thought it was. It was a blessing in disguise.